Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of The Growth Show. I'm joined with Tom Pickering and David Berkeley today, and we have decided we're going to go through some of our predictions for 2021. So let's see what they are. Let's kick off with you, David. David, give us your first prediction for 2021.
This is one we're not going to see for a few years. But I think in a few years' time, we're going to look back and see how many companies started this year and are now enormous companies. We saw it in, the credit crunch, with loads of companies like Airbnb and things like that just springing up then. This is an amazing time for opportunities, and we're going to reap those opportunities in the years to come. But that's my first big prediction, is that we're going to look back and see some amazing new companies come out of this time.
Excellent. I have to wait a couple of years for that one. But I totally agree on there. And Tom, what do you want to kick off with?
I think for me, Nick, I'd have a slightly different angle on this similar sort of thing. I'd say that the challenge at the moment is to actually figure out what's the right thing to do. I think a lot of businesses are swimming without a rudder and sort of reinventing the rules and trying to get back. So I think the main challenge I'd like to add is what does the fabric of society look like? And what does good business practice look like? Because unless that's sort of clear, I think a lot of businesses are going to fail.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go through that. I'll throw one in for a mix, and we have a little chat around it. One of my predictions for 2021 is the first businesses who can confidently mobilize a junior graduate workforce back in an office environment will win big, really, really big. They will drive culture harder. They have the best selection of highly qualified grads who are unemployed at the moment, who are eager and fighting hard to get into a workplace, who potentially they could have not accessed before. The guy who was always going off to a private equity firm, who doesn't have an option now because they don't know how to remotely onboard people, could be amazing. Like desperate, hardworking people who want to get going. So my prediction is whoever managed to mobilize that workforce first back into a cultural environment is going to win big. There's my bit there. David, what else from you?
We're going to see a massive employment shift. So at the moment in lockdown, obviously people having to work from home, but I think there will soon be patterns for people to see it's not sustainable. You don't need to do 5 days a week, 12 hours a day in an office. And we're going to see massive geography shifts in terms of where people are living. People might not be having to live in big cities. They might having to be moving further out to commute a bit further. All this stuff's kind of happening but we haven't seen what actually life looks like post-lockdown. But I think this will become something that will stick. People are going to have far better work-life balances because they've seen the benefits from it during this time. So I think we're going to see a big shift in how people work. That shift is going to continue.
Okay, and how do you think performance is going to be? Do you think the way we judge performance is going to change much within that?
No. I think the people will perform arguably probably better because they'll have a better work-life balance, potentially. Better. I know loads of my friends who don't see their children from Sunday night to Saturday morning because they're getting up. They were getting up before they would, go to bed and come home after their kids had gone to bed. And I think that will make for better rounded people if you've got better interactions with your family. I think therefore people will be generally happier, and therefore I think they'll perform better at work. That is making some huge generalizations that I'm sure Tom will pick me up on. But I think generally speaking, I think a happier employee is a probably more productive employee. And I think as long as you've got the frameworks in place for a business as to how you're measuring the metrics, how you're getting the best out of people, that will only increase performance.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be a bigger boom in regional offices, as in little hub working spaces? Because there's a bunch of people, when I do get to leave the house, really, and go for a quick walk, I see a few very dejected people I know moping around the park doing their lap, what they have to do, who are craving interaction.
Yep.
And I was wondering that, yes, remote might be here, but maybe the localized WeWorky type hub offices might see a boom of people who just need to be in that more corporate environment than their spare room or their kitchen table. Absolutely.
I think that would shift on to another prediction for this year, is that we're going to see a massive shift in how commercial property is used. There's another one. We'll slip that cheeky prediction in. Because I think there's going to be loads of people on this office space, be it in regional towns or big cities. What do you do with it if companies are downsizing because they don't need 300 offices, 300 desks, 400 desks, whatever it is, and that they're going to sort of downsize? And I think that is driven from a fundamental human need to be in interaction with other people. The big reason why so many people are struggling with mental health issues at the moment is because we're disconnected from other people. And that is one thing that kind of really marks out the human species, is we need to be in contact with other people. Even the most introverted people, they need to be in contact with other people. And I think that is there's another massive opportunity there for people who can provide spaces for people to connect. Will be enormous.
Perfect. And Tom, what else are you thinking this year?
Well, I think I'd just pick up two of your points, Nick, because I think what does good look, coming back to my first point, but it also captures what you were talking about in terms of creating an environment that young people want to work in, which is all very well, but how do we do that? And also David's points about intimacy, relationships, and all that sort of stuff. So I think I'm going to break your rules for a start, because I like breaking rules. That's what I do for a living. So I've got 6 points. So the first, in terms of these are the things I think we need to measure. This is my prediction in terms of what does good look like for 2020. And I think it's a bit bold, but I think actually if people break these rules, are in trouble. And the first one is creating work for all levels, and that includes people like this you've just outlined. And in terms of young people, the tragedy is that if people are out of work, there's a good chance that the new intake of graduates will actually usurp the people who've been out of work. So really difficult situation there. Second one is profit, right? We're going to increase profit and prices. That sounds counterintuitive, but it enables businesses to become sustainable. People relationships, reducing suicide. Suicide's a big problem, big difficult topic to talk about. Mental health, reducing online and tech as well. So some of the facilitators, the assumptions you might have been referring to, maybe David, when you were saying that, I think we need to get off tech. It's people are losing themselves, which is difficult. The fifth one is local and community. We both touched on that. I think, well, David, you did around local community. You talked about walking out your back door, Nick. And the last one, I think, it's intimacy. And what do I mean by that? It's actually the whole thing around diversity. But basically, when we're speaking to people, are we interested? Do we care? Are we acknowledging for who they are? And are we really interested in a different view? And so they're my predictions, Nick, in terms of that some metrics to challenge our actions. I'm not particularly suggesting they're 100%, because that would just be bonkers of me, but that's based on a lot of our work and a huge amount of engagement from last year and to date, and I continuously challenge that. So that's what I'd like to contribute. Perfect.
I mean, that's great. I mean, some incredibly valid sort of points there we got to address on there, but that's a great list. Thank you, Tom. I definitely think the future at the moment is a combination of getting from an office environment anyway, getting a safe space that you can be together with people. But like for our business already, I could envisage reducing the space by half, right, to cater for the people who frankly need that environment to perform at their best, but also a space that we can just be sort of safe and collective and have discussions in, and more of a coming together space, a place we know we can always go, a bit like Cheers, where everyone knows your name, sort of thing like that. It's like that kind of safe environment. And especially for actually, spoke with someone today who's training and developing people, and they've given it a really good go over Zoom to get this right. And they're back in the city today, sat down next to both of them, driving them really hard. The difference is now is an intensity to training. They're like going, well, I'm only going to be here for 4 days, so I'm going to go at it really hard. But so I think that combination of community, safe space, people thinking about mental health, I think is key. I also think I think no one can design an environment. I think no one ever should design an environment just for a level, which I think you might have touched on there. And I think anyone who tries to design stuff for graduates doesn't understand being a graduate, what a graduate really wants, right? They want to be challenged, they want to be driven, they want direction, right? They want to learn. They don't want to be catered for, right? And I do think most businesses make like, you can give them perks and stuff like that, but that shouldn't be at the heart of what you're trying to do when building a business. Your business should be at the heart of what you're trying to do. Business, the people around it, and if you put those right structures in place, people will follow you and learn from you. But the amount of people trying to build stuff for graduates was insane. Now it's gone the other way because they don't know how to do it. So I think taking a few of your points there, that's my sort of summary of a few of those points there. One of my other predictions, which is very boring, is that Bitcoin will go past 60,000 this year. For all you crypto people, I think that's definitely on the cards. David, what else for 2021 is sort of on your radar, or you think could be coming down the pipe?
Leaders are going to have to become a lot more flexible. When the old ways of doing things are not going to work. They're already sort of creaking and cracking before all this pandemic, but I think we're going to have to work far harder at getting to know people, getting the best out of them, empowering people to do. If people are going to work more remotely and you're not going to be there in an office, we need to work at how people can really be empowered to do their best work when nobody's watching. And that is going to be a real challenge for a lot of leaders. And some people just won't be able to adapt, and they're going to find it really hard to retain talent when they're, constantly checking in on people and wanting everyone to have their Zoom on from the minute they get in, the minute they start work at their desk to the minute they clock off. Those kind of things. It's going to be really, really challenging for them to kind of retain people. So I think flexibility in leadership and adaptability are going to be big things.
Yeah, and an understanding of when the working day sort of ends for people as well a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like all of us are everyone's working all hours at the moment, so there is no more definition for me of when the day sort of starts or stops, right? And partly that's fine right now when we can't leave our houses, and actually, I'd rather work than watch some nonsense on TV, right? But in a world where we can actually leave our houses and communicate again, we have to respect the fact that people will be able to go to a yoga class again and be able to go to a run or boxing or whatever it might be. And I think that will be interesting for people, because they might have driven more performance out of this period because there's been frankly nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Reintroducing all that, you're not going to get potentially not going to get the same performance because they're not dedicating the same hours to what's being done. And that needs to be recognised.
I think there's sorry to jump in there. There is a burnout fear at the moment. I know lots of people who, because there's nothing else to do, they're working loads, but they're getting burnt out. You can see it in the eyes in Zoom that people are less engaged. And hours is no metric for productivity. It is in some industries, it is in some things, absolutely. But I think we've got to get away from this kind of, the more hours you do, the more profitable you are. And I think people who reframe this time to sort of either ease people back in or adapt to how this now works are going to really, as you were saying, they're going to really clean up. Because it might be that people go, if you ever try going to a gym in London at 5, 6 in the morning, it's packed. Well, what happens if people are working from home and you go, okay, well, why don't you get up at 6, do a couple of hours work, then you can go to the gym at 9 o'clock where it's quieter and crack on. And therefore people get the same productivity because they're not going back into the rat race, and they're not kind of going into places where they're busy at the wrong times they don't want to, or even dare I say it, government restrictions might not allow it. All those types of things, they that will come into it. And so I think people need to be this fallacy of hours equals performance. Even at the moment, I think we're seeing that dipping off because I don't think people are more productive right now. I think this is now really beginning to test people on the mental health side. In the summer, it was easier when you're at home. You can go for a lovely long walk. You can go out in the evening. You can do all that kind of stuff. Now, sat at home, it's cold, it's wet. I've just walked the dogs, and I think it's wind chill about -5, -6. It's not fun. Get back home, you're freezing. Yeah, that's going to be a real challenge for people as they come out of this.
Yeah, like a little bit of advice to people on here. If someone asks me how I'm doing, I deliberately say this is shit, right? Not great, right? And when I've said that to people, there's not been one person who's come back to me going like, I'm loving it, right? But I also know that person, if I went, yeah, it's great, it's fine, you know, a bit annoying, but it's all right, I get the same reaction. And I think one of the things we can do to help each other is just letting the person asking you that question know that it's fine for it to suck, right? And just, you know, and both of us left that weird 5-minute, you know, conversation on our way to Tesco's or where it was, feeling like, yeah, you know, not alone. Like, very senior guy in the banking world, you know, who is an absolute rock of a person from the outside, really, really struggling because all of his tools have been taken away from him, because he's potentially a relationship manager for one of the world's biggest banks. And he's like, kind of relationship manager, constantly on Zoom, trying to connect with people, and just always feeling that 10% less connection, you know, on really important business decisions. And you're like, yeah. So I think, you know, anyone asking you that question, like, how are you finding it? You know, my thing at the moment is to go like, no, you know, it's this, you know, that's how I feel. That's what I feel about it. And it's allowed people to just, you know, then I haven't said anything after that for the next 5 minutes. They've just told me, you know, how they're doing, how they're feeling. And I hope there's been a benefit to going down that road. Tom, saw you wanting to jump in there.
Did you? All right, okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. So just pick up on a few of the points. Get another machine gun thing, because we've all got different styles, but I'm a lateral thinker, and then I home in on the details. So I think just picking up some of the points, I think this uniquely, we need to deal with the whole person. And if you're not feeling right, yeah, absolutely. If you ask the question and you get an answer you don't want, are you interested? Should you ask the question in the first place? But the situation for single people who are stuck in flats, young people doing whatever they're doing, is entirely different to a married couple. I personally am really enjoying this time. So I've really, really challenged myself, and I've really changed what I'm doing. So I think if people aren't, then guess what? You are going to be in trouble. There's no doubt about that. I think another point you mentioned is Bitcoin, Nick. I think Bitcoin is nothing more than a fraud. And the reason why I say that is, and I'm happy to have the conversation offline or in a different discussion, is because it requires a lot more critical thinking than its price. There are massive issues with Bitcoin. Leaves us open to cyber fraud on an unbelievable scale, and it leaves us open to getting completely shafted by China as well, for example. Not to mention the fact it takes advantage of all of our psychological weaknesses, which I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, even if I could make 20 grand tomorrow, I wouldn't touch it. I think that's an example of actually taking the right action. So it's something that's clear in my mind, but it doesn't fit with, in my view, what good looks like. I think there's two other things. I think it's very important to acknowledge the difficulty of this particular situation. So as a turnaround practitioner, you know, I really need to understand what's going on. There are 600,000 SMEs at the moment who are distressed. And of the 1.5 million who have had bounce back loans, they will not be repaid. The lenders of those loans are going to go bust as well, because the government aren't going to support them. No one's talking about that. No one's thinking about that, Nick. So there's a brutal reality. And yet, what are we doing? We're criticising the boss of KPMG, saying his staff are a bunch of lazy so-and-sos, or whatever it said. And what's vital at the moment is that despite the fact that someone may say something unpopular, it's very important to understand where they're coming from and not label and fire them, because the people with the balls to speak up, Nick, are getting shot down in flames, which is nothing short of a disaster. So I think there's sort of 2 points: is the challenge, the reality of doing nothing, and the wokeness, which is all about doing nothing. And then we've got some really dodgy, flawed response in terms of digitization. Oddly enough, I'm speaking on a public sector conference coming up on digitization, which should be quite fun. I'm certainly not going to tell them what they want to hear. And I think as well, you know, at its most basic level, digitization, people confuse the word efficiency and experience, right? And somehow that an efficient experience, efficient service is a good experience. It's not. It drives people mad when it's digital. So even at the most basic level, in terms of the basic knowledge of people, it's critical we start getting this stuff right. I think the sort of solution to this is around managing relationships, and we've been talking about the importance of, being together, and I think that also is acknowledging people's unique circumstances, and it's critical we take new action, Nick. So, we were talking about your exercise and the fact you haven't been exercising, and I've been taking a stupid amount. I've totally changed my diary, so I don't work stupid hours. I've started 6 businesses, and I've actually stuck to these things, Nick, as well, that I've just mentioned to you before. And the interesting thing about that is you get the business model right. And actually, when you get the business model right, you start making money from the word go. So everything I do, I make money on, Nick, not because I'm waiting for tomorrow when I get 1,000 customers or 1,000 likes. No, every piece of work I do, I make money on. And that's around these terms. And when you start a business from scratch, you can do that. You can have a go at getting that right. I think there's 2 last things I'd say in terms of watching out for. So I think it's important to set out the stall and do things right. Otherwise, they're going to get unwound. No doubt about it, you're going to create rework, and there's no space for taking wrong action at the moment. I think the Boohoo acquisition, the ASOS acquisition, is absolute disaster for UK PLC. I think the KPMG, thing, chairman was disaster. I think that GameStop thing, absolutely disastrous. Showed up the whole the funding system, just a sham. This is stuff that's going to which can lead to unrest. So let's not talk it. In my view, let's not talk it down. We need to address this stuff because it's very easy for these people just to continue being greedy. So I think, in these situations, it's very important the good people don't say nothing. I see a lot of people saying nothing. I intentionally post stuff on LinkedIn to see who's got any balls, or whatever the female equivalent is, to try and I'm just amazed how, particularly women actually, because women really typically care a lot about this stuff, and they're absolutely silent, which worries me. And I think the very last thing I'd say is that it is the time for courageous people to rise up, because if you look back at history, everyone thinks it's the masses that overturn things. No, if you look at the gulags, they were overturned by 1 or 2 very, very brave people who never did the wrong thing, Nick, right? And they actually ripped apart that whole hideous Stalinist system, the gulags in Russia. So it will be strong individuals, and it won't be people who get liked who will sort this mess out. So there's a few encouraging things there, but overall, I'd really encourage people to do the right thing, and you make money. And if the sort of points I mentioned in the first place, if we do that, it works. The challenge is, have we got the courage to do that, Nick? Because it flies in the face of pretty much everything that people have taught on MBA programs for the last 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to digest there. Actually, I mean, it's a very good speech there, Tom. I mean, that's good. Well, David, what about you as sort of a closing thought on the future for 2021?
Probably just to nick a bit of Tom's there is be bold. Whether you're a graduate going into the market, you're looking for a job and you're struggling to find something, now's the time to be bold and back yourself in something. Yeah. If you're a business owner, now's the time to not shy away from problems. It's to really grab them and deal with them. This is a really good time to be bold and take responsibility for yourself, for your family, for your life, what you really want to do.
Yeah.
The water is going to get choppier, but that's okay because it's going to get choppier. So if you know it is, you can do 1 or 2 things with that. You either ignore it and hope that it doesn't, and stay in the bow of the boat and wait for it to blow over and nothing. Good luck with that. Or you can take action and you can do something. And I think there are going to be amazing opportunities for people right now who want to take action, who want to do new things, who want to really push themselves and make a name for themselves. I think this is an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. I just add one thing to that, Nick, if I may. There's various things I can't talk about, but there was one chief executive who I was advising who actually stood down, right, who was actually doing exactly what David just said. And I said to him, why did he stand down? It's so important that we get around each other, okay, and don't let people who are sticking their heads out taking these bold actions. And David used the word action. I'd add the word new in front of action, because action in the current environment is is very much more of the same. It's around cost cutting. It's around more digitization, which is the antithesis, and that will get unwound. So very important, I think, to take new action, but and also to get round people, show love to people. I use the word love quite blatantly, right? It's about intimacy. It's about having that connection, because it's what makes us function. Love makes us function.
Yeah, no, I mean, very strong words. I think coming back to your points from my side to finish off, is definitely around that new action point, and also around that boldness, but aimed at some of the more younger guys, probably young guys and girls out there at the moment. Is the issue always with interns was the fact it cost a fortune to get into usually where you wanted to intern, right? And so after doing it, so employers are a bit reluctant to it. I think right now, if you know you are stuck at home, right, and can't go out anywhere, and going out your mind with it, just have a value add approach, you know, like be bold, reach out to someone to do and say, let me just show you what I can do.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to leave your room. You got to pay for a phone bill. Maybe they cover your phone bill. I don't know, like you, so you can stream and do whatever you need to do, but just use this time to do something proactively. You know, use this time to evidence a skill set that, frankly, that business didn't realize they needed, right? You might be a videographer, and you could transform so many businesses overnight from a content creation play, right, of doing it. That will build your portfolio and get you seen. You know, a support, administration, whatever it is, you know, just put yourself in a position to add value and start evidencing a key factor of that you did more than most in a time when there were no options. And building that resilience, I think, is a very attractive trait to other employers. So I think don't be abused, you know, for free labor, but the choices of doing nothing or doing something to move your career forward, do something.
Yeah.
On that.
In terms of doing something on that, I'd offer anybody who's listening to, if anybody's free to speak to me, I'm always happy to be a sounding board. And I'd just add to what you just said. I think keep it basic. Everyone tries to sort of solve the world and grow. No. Do something simple. A lot of the businesses I've done are just ticking along, making money, meeting people, developing relationships, doing the things I outlined at the first place, and it works. So let's not be massive growth, digital, all that nonsense. Let's just get back to basics at the time. But I personally, Nick, I'd be very happy to speak to anybody who feels either completely fed up or just needed someone to speak to. Specific action, I'll happily make time for people.
It's perfect, yeah. Brilliant. David, unless there's anything else you want to get in, I think we're wrapping up.
The last thing just on that is I would phone influencers in business, people, decision makers, and say, what are your business problems? I'd start from that point. Be a problem solver. People who solve problems get paid. End of. If you want to create, creating value, as Tom was saying, find out what people's problems are. It might be that you can't solve it, but you know someone else who can. Then you become more relevant to people anyway, because you become a person who knew the solution. But just listen to people. What are their problems, and get a solution in there. That is where you're going to add value to people. Find out everyone's got problems. Everyone needs things fixed. Find out what they are. Create solutions.
Perfect. Well, that's great. As always, with anything we try and set off on, that goes down way different tangents, but it's always incredibly interesting. Thank you to everyone at home for supporting us and getting involved. Please feel free to reach out. One of the good places to contact us is via www.eximiusexecutive.com, where you can email in and we can help you on either any of the training issues, coaching issues, turnaround issues, growth issues you might have, for like a free chat so we can understand you and the businesses. Otherwise, thank you for liking these videos, staying in contact, and we will catch up very, very, very soon. All the best to you, and we'll speak soon. Goodbye.